Howdy readers, I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse, and today I wanted to just talk with you guys a little bit about Maybe Midrash, and not just what I'm planning to read for it, or to give you some recommendations, which I plan to do as well, but just to kind of reflect a little bit on it. If I can get my glasses to. It's funny, in this world of wearing masks, I feel like even when I'm not wearing a mask, my glasses tend to get foggy now for some reason. And I don't know, like they've been trained how to do it and they enjoy it. And so that's what they're going to do. But I wanted to reflect a little bit on Maybe Midrash, particularly this year. So I was talking with Dario from Motley Reads the other day. And I told him that I'm looking forward to it more this year, even than I was last year, which was its inaugural year, right? I had the idea for it last year. And I think I had the idea for it long before, the pandemic hit really hard in the West in mid-March of last year. And, and thinking about it this year, I have been, over the last, however many months, I've been reasonably unhappy for a lot of the last year, for obvious reasons, right? With the pandemic and just the kind of upheaval in all of our lives and all of our routines. I don't think I ever realized how much a creature of routine I really was until this last year, when it had been upended and I had to figure out kind of new ways of doing things. But, one of the things that has happened as a result of that is that, we haven't been going to church, right? We go to church on Zoom, and forgive me, this is just going to be a constant thing apparently during this video. We go to church on Zoom, but it's not quite the same. And I'll be honest, Kelly and I, while we used to be regular churchgoers for years and years and years, for a handful of years prior to the pandemic, we hadn't been regular churchgoers. Certainly we were going more than we have in the last 13 months, which has been 0 times. We had some, some trouble, some issues with some of the people in the church, and, didn't really feel welcomed by some of the people in the church. And even when you do feel welcomed by many in the church, right, including, the pastor, and we're really close to our pastor, and our pastor's husband is probably my best friend here in Casper, and we had made a lot of other friends, and who we still call friends there in the church, but we had just had a couple of bad experiences, and so we weren't going as much as we had done in the past anyway. But it was always nice to know that it was there when we needed to go. And, when something in our souls was kind of sort of prodding us to go, urging us to go. And having it there as a possibility there was just something comforting about it, right? Which they're supposed to be. And not having that the last year, I think at a time when we needed it the most, or speaking for myself, when I needed it the most, has been a challenge. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about religious literature, right? Which is the whole idea behind Maybe Midrash, right? Reading serious fiction that concerns itself with religious thought, with the religious life, and with doubt and with struggle, with deep, inexplicable, mysterious faith. And the truth of the matter is I would say that my spiritual compass, as it were, right, my religious compass, has probably been kind of buttressed up more by secular fiction that deals with religion than it has by anything else, right? By scripture, by services, by liturgy. There have been services and sermons that I've heard, that have had a tremendous impact on my faith and my identification as a Christian. But on the whole, I think it's been art, right? I think it's been film and novels and poetry, like Christian Wyman's poetry, and even paintings that have had the biggest impact on me, right? I mean, it's in those works of art where I feel God the strongest, right? Where my sense of God's presence is strongest. And I don't know, I haven't been reading as much of that in the last year as probably would have done me good. And I haven't been watching enough of the films and just engaging with the art that was going to be best for my soul, I suppose. And maybe Midrash is a way of doing that, right? For me, it's a way of kind of centering myself, bringing myself back to center where I need to be, where I feel safest, but also most challenged and most comforted, and I suppose most filled with courage. So that's what Maybe Midrash is for me. So as far as the recommendations go in this video, right? Mariette and Ecstasy by Ron Hansen. Angels in America, the plays by Tony Kushner. When I read books like these, I sense God in them, at work in them, right? Being buffeted about in them. If I think of the books as a kind of tapestry, God becomes the thread in the tapestry, if that makes any sense. And I have long thought that where truth exists and where beauty exists, God is in those places, that these things spring from him. And where they exist in tandem, where they exist as a kind of braid, his presence is even stronger somehow. And so I just wanted to read a little bit to you. Let me clean the steam off my glasses again. The sun's coming out. But I just wanted to read to you just a couple of things. All right, so a long passage from Mariette and Ecstasy, and then a couple of short passages from Kushner's Angels in America plays. So Mariette and Ecstasy, right, written by Ron Hansen. Ron Hansen's a Catholic. He is from Nebraska. I think he lives in California right now, though. And he actually just co-wrote an original screenplay. I think the film's called The World to Come, starring Catherine Waterston, Vanessa Kirby, and Casey Affleck. I was in theaters recently. Of course, I wasn't able to go see it, even though it was here at our local cinemas. But Ron Hansen is just a wonderful novelist. He's a really great essayist as well. But I just wanted to read to you just a long passage from this book, so you could get a sense of maybe of what I mean when I talk about how prose like this, the beauty of it, the inquiry of it, the investigation within it, is good for the soul, right? It's good for my soul, anyway. Mass of Saint Ursula and companions, virgins, martyrs. Wrens are cheeping wildly and flying from branch to branch in the junipers. Winter is still just a hint of purple and gold in the hilltop maples. High above them, there is a faint sickle moon and twilight skies of indigo blue fading to beryl and green at the tree line. Sister Dominique strolls in the garth at collation. She hears words from the Imitation of Christ. Wisps of smoke unwrap from the stovepipe. She rolls pebbles in her hand. Workhorses noisily slurp water from a tank and simultaneously pause. Ears twitching, a pregnant mare raises her nose and sniffs the wind in two directions. Her tail flicks, and the horses drink again. Sister Monique, Sister Saint Leon, Sister Emmanuel, walking in the Gethsemane garden, wincing and smiling at talk of infants. Star, another there, and there. Compline and dismissal. Mariette gets into her nightgown and kneels on the floor to hastily pen another letter, her hand moving with great speed and urgency across the page. 21st October, 1906. Either they think that I have been false and dissembling and too good to be true, or they think that I have been so blessed by our Lord that I am hardly human, that Christ has rewarded this postulant with perfect bliss. Well, it is not always so for me. The hardness and loneliness of our sisterhood possess me when I am least prepared to chase the ill feelings from me with prayer. Weeks have passed since I have experienced the sweetness of Christ in Holy Communion. Every joy and consolation of the Church has disappeared like jewels dropped from my hand into snow. Temptations that never troubled me in the world have now been bestowed on me by Satan in this holiest of places. Sins from my past rise up to haunt me and remind me of my pettiness and weakness, so that it seems God could have only utter hatred and contempt for me. My soul has become a black house furnished in sorrow and pity. I have been dreaming, it seems, a 12-year dream which has left me tired and weary. What has happened to me, Père Mariette? Where are the holy graces and consolations that brought me into religious life? And where is Jesus? He comes no more when I call to him. I seek him in vain. He answers my questions no more. I shall always love him, of course, but I fear that I shall never again dwell in his love, and I know that I cannot live without him. She puts down her fountain pen and looks over her pages, holding her knees to her chest in a fetal position just outside the yellow sphere of candlelight. The hiss of her prayers is the only sound. And it's just lovely, right? And beyond just being a beautiful prose, right? Evocative prose, it is unafraid to dig deep into, the sense of fear and the sense of desolation that can exist within the religious life, right? This is not, being a person of faith, being a believer, is not, despite the fact that people like Kirk Cameron would want you to believe it is. It is not all s'mores by the campfire and sing-alongs and kumbaya. It is very, very little of that. It is more this than that. And for, writers of faith, and even writers who are atheists, right? People like Jose Saramago, to plumb those depths, right? To acknowledge that truth. They're so much more interested in not having the answers, right? That they're, obsessed, I suppose on some level, obsessed with, the act and process of searching, the act and process of asking questions and learning to live without answers. I just find it fascinating. And I find it heartening. I find it comforting. So Angels in America, right? Tony Kushner is a Jewish playwright. It's two plays, right? Millennium Approaches and Perestroika. Together, these are a masterpiece of American drama. There's no contemporary work of American drama that I've ever read from the beginning of the 20th century on that even approaches the greatness of these plays. And the first passage I wanted to read to you is from a young woman in the play who's a Mormon and who is struggling in her marriage, right? Her husband, a young Mormon man, is homosexual and has tried to kind of suppress it, et cetera, and his wife feels isolated and alone as a result. And this is just a chunk of her. It's kind of a monologue, the beginning of what is this? Scene 3, Act 1, Scene 3 in Millennium Approaches. People who are lonely, people left alone, sit talking nonsense to the air, imagining beautiful systems dying, old fixed orders spiraling apart. When you look at the ozone layer from outside, from a spaceship, it looks like a pale blue halo, a gentle shimmering aureole encircling the atmosphere, encircling the earth. 30 miles above our heads, a thin layer of 3-atom oxygen molecules, product of photosynthesis, which explains the fussy vegetable preference for visible light, its rejection of darker rays and emanations. Danger from without. It's a kind of gift from God, the crowning touch to the creation of the world. Guardian angels, hands linked, make a spherical net, a blue-green nesting orb, a shell of safety for life itself. But everywhere, things are collapsing, lies surfacing, systems of defense giving way. This is why, Joe, this is why I shouldn't be left alone. And then later, in Angels in America, we see Harper, and she is at a kind of Mormon, not a museum, but a kind of Mormon travel center, and there's a diorama of the old Mormon settlers in there, and this is a scene where the Mormon mother in the diorama comes to life. Okay, and Harper, the character who we just heard from, has a conversation with the Mormon mother from the diorama. Harper says, "Bitter lady of the plains, talk to me. Tell me what to do." Says the Mormon mother turns to Harper, then stands and leaves the diorama stage. She gestures with her head for Harper to follow her. Harper goes to the diorama, gets in the Mormon mother's seat. Harper to the dummy father. "Look at us, so perfect in place. The desert, the mountains, the previous century. Maybe I could have believed in you then. Maybe we should never have moved east." To the Mormon mother. "I'm stuck. My heart's an anchor." Mormon mother. "Leave it then. Can't carry no extra weight." Harper. "Was it a hard thing, crossing the prairies?" Mormon mother. "You ain't stupid, so don't ask stupid. Ask something for real." Harper. A beat, then. "In your experience of the world, how do people change?" Mormon mother. "Well, it has something to do with God, so it's not very nice. God splits the skin with a jagged thumbnail from throat to belly, and then plunges a huge, filthy hand in. He grabs hold of your bloody tubes, and they slip to evade his grasp. But he squeezes hard, he insists. He pulls and pulls till all your innards are yanked out, and the pain, we can't even talk about that. And then he stuffs them back, dirty, tangled, and torn. It's up to you to do the stitching." Harper. "And then get up and walk around." Mormon mother. "Just mangled guts, pretending." Harper. "That's how people change." And here's the thing, right? So I'm not Jewish like Tony Kushner. I'm not a Mormon like Harper or the Mormon mother from the diorama. But that is true. There is truth in that passage. It's uncomfortable. It's terrifying on some level. But it's true. And it's beautiful. So anyway, what am I going to be reading for Maybe Midrash, right? The work of nonfiction that I'm going to be reading is the one that Kelly read last year. And this is called Inspired, Slaying Giants, Walking on Water, and Loving the Bible Again by Rachel Held Evans. Now, Rachel Held Evans is a writer that I have yet to read. And we bought this book after, I don't know how many of you remember Leonard Murray, but he was a frequent commenter on a lot of our channels. And he and I had become really good friends. And he was a kind of theological academic, right? Worked at a university in South Africa. And just an incredibly well-educated man. And he and I had become quite good friends. And he died at the end of December in 2019. And I'll never forget learning that information. Well, it was earlier in 2019 that he put Rachel Held Evans on my radar. And she was a writer that he really, really loved. She was a kind of leading light in progressive evangelicalism. And she died out of the blue, kind of unexpectedly, earlier in 2019. She died of complications from the flu. And yeah, she was quite young. I think she was still in her 30s. She was married. She had 2 little kids. And he was pretty broken up by her death. And he, like I said, put her on my radar and made me really curious about her work. So that's what I'm going to be reading as my work of nonfiction from Maybe Midrash. And then for my work of fiction, I was going to read As a God Might Be by Neil Griffiths, right? Erstwhile booktuber Neil Griffiths. But, you know, as some of you have probably seen over time on my channel, when it comes to reading, my eyes tend to be bigger than my stomach. And, you know, and I mean, I'm still not done with my March of the Mammoth, which is no surprise that I'm still not done with my Mammoth. You know, it's the 3rd year March of the Mammoth, and I never finish it in March. You know, it comes from being a slow reader and lots of other things and reasons. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I tend to have more going on than I can kind of keep a handle on, if that makes any sense. So, you know, in May, I had been planning to read Jack by Marilynne Robinson, the 4th novel in her Gilead quartet, with my friend Mark, whose channel, when he had a booktube channel here on the platform, was Words Everywhere. And, you know, and I got to thinking, well, if I read As a God Might Be, which is huge, and the Rachel Held Evans book, and Jack, and then I have a book from my book club at the same time, I'm still likely going to be reading Red Comet. It's just going to be too much. And so I thought I would let Jack by Marilynne Robinson, the buddy read that I plan to do, kind of double dip and be my work of fiction from Maybe Midrash as well, because even though Jack, from what I've read, may have less to do with religion explicitly than certainly the first 2 books in the quartet, and maybe even than Lila, it's Marilynne Robinson, and I mean, just to flip through the pages reveals that the novel is deeply concerned with religion and with God. So that is going to be my work of fiction for Maybe Midrash. We welcome you, me and the other co-hosts, right? Steve Donahue, Rick McDonnell, and Felicia from Little Prairie Library. We welcome you to join in this with us. This is not a readathon, a booktube event that is designed or at all interested in converting people or dissuading people from their faiths. It is not at all intended to do that. What we want is people to acknowledge that religion is worth thinking more seriously about than we often think about it, and to acknowledge as well that serious, thoughtful literary fiction can oftentimes be an open window into the process of doing that, right? Into the adventure of doing that, of looking at religion as seriously, as thoughtfully, as carefully as it warrants, as it deserves. So anyway, my friends, that's it, I suppose, for now. Yeah, I will talk to you guys again very soon. Adios.